In this video, I'll show you how to build any scroll animation in Framer without writing a single line of code. It's going to be pretty cool because we're going to build this scroll animation from the Teddy website as an exercise, and I'm going to show you a bunch of secret tactics that I just came up with that will help you to create basically any scroll animation by just drawing rectangles on the design canvas. My name is Nandi, this is Framer University, and let's get started. So I'm going to break this video up into 4 sections. In the first section, we're going to analyze the animation and we will kind of figure out how we can recreate it. Then in the second section, we're going to take a look at how we can set up sticky positioning on our website and how we can use it for these scroll animations. In the third section, we're going to plan the animation, and in the last section, we're going to execute that animation. So without any further ado, let's jump into the first section and let's analyze this scroll animation on the teddy.app website. So as you can see, here I am on the teddy.app website, and as you can see, as we start scrolling down here, all of these images are moving away, but what we notice is that even though we are scrolling down on the page, we don't see the elements moving away, just like here, like what we would see normally on the website. We basically have this section here sticking to the center of our viewport, and then all of these images are animated, and also the text here in the middle is animated. So it is really important that here we have a sticky setup. We have a sticky frame that is sticking to the center of the viewport, and then we have all of these animations that are happening as we scroll further down on the page, and then after a while they scroll away. So let's jump into Framer and take a look at how we can set this project up in a way that we have the sticky positioning as we scroll on the page. We have a sticky frame that is sticking to the center of the viewport. And so yeah, let's take a look at this Framer project here that we have. It's really important that I'm going to have a remix link in the description. You're going to be able to remix this project. And if you go to the pages here, you're going to find this starter page, and you're going to basically see what I'm seeing right here in this video. You're going to have all of the images here on the left, and basically you're going to be able to follow along with me and build this animation as I'm doing it here in this video. It is really useful because then you can also practice, and we all know that that's the real way of learning something. So let's get started. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to just draw a frame here within this main frame. As you can see, we have the desktop breakpoint on this page, and then we have this main frame within, and within that we're gonna draw a frame by just pressing down F on our keyboard and drawing a frame here. And this will be just a spacer here, so at the top we have some space here, so just to have something like a hero section there, but it's just gonna be a placeholder. So I'm gonna call this hero, and then the fill width will be applied here, and the height will be viewport, and let's say 40 VH. 40 VH for the height here means that we will always take up 40% of the given viewport. So viewport is basically the part of the website that we are seeing. If it's on a mobile, then it's something a little bit smaller. If it's a large website like this, it's a bit bigger. But 40 VH is great because it will make sure that this section here at the top will always be 40% of our given viewport. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another section here within this main, and this will be our section that we're going to work with. So I'm going to set this width to fill, and the height will be around 800 pixels for now, and then the fill color will be removed, and then I'm going to apply a layout here. So now we have this tag. I'm going to rename this to animation section, and now we can take a look at how sticky positioning works. We can draw a frame here within this animation section. I'm going to set it to a blue color for now, and then I'll make sure that it is positioned at the top of this section. So I'll select the animation section, and I'll change this alignment to the top here on the layout settings. So now we have something like this. If we preview the site, you can see we have this rectangle that scrolls away. And let's see what happens if we apply sticky positioning on this blue frame. So I'm going to go here to the right panel, and I'm going to switch it to sticky. So if we preview this, you'll see that nothing changed. And that's basically because we have to make sure that all parent frames of this blue frame is set to overflow visible. That's the only way that sticky will work. So we have to make sure that we select all of the parent frames. So the first parent frame is the animation section. That is the first frame that wraps our blue frame right here. Then another parent frame is the main, and the last one is the desktop breakpoint itself. So now we can go to the right panel and select overflow visible here. So now if we preview this again, you will see that sticky positioning now works, and this frame is sticking to the top of the viewport. Now you can see that this animation section is a little bit larger than the blue frame itself. But if we make sure that it is kind of the same size, you'll see that sticky positioning not really functions. So it is also really important that the parent frame of the sticky positioned frame, so in this case the animation section, needs to be larger than the sticky positioned frame itself, because then this sticky positioned frame will be sticking to the top of the viewport until it reaches the end of its parent section. So as the bottom edge of the sticky positioned frame meets the bottom edge of its parent frame, it will start scrolling away again. So if we make this website a little bit larger, maybe 4000 pixels, you're gonna see that it is sticky, and then at a certain point it starts scrolling away. We can also add a little bit different fill color to its parent so we can see when it ends. So as you can see, the bottom edge of its parent starts coming up, and then when they meet there, the sticky position frame also starts scrolling away. So basically this is the setup that we can use in our animation. We can remove the fill color from here, and then this frame will be called sticky. And then if you think about it, we can make sure that this here is not like 400 pixels or something like that. We can make sure that it takes up the full viewport by setting 100 VH for its height. So I'm gonna set 100 VH, and then the width will be fill, and the fill color will be removed. And I'm gonna add the layout here as well, just to make sure that we can place elements within this really easily. Then I'm gonna make sure that the animation section here is again a little bit larger, just to make sure that we will have this sticky effect for a little bit longer. And then what we can do is we can start placing these elements within the sticky positioned frame here. So the images and the text. First of all, I'm going to just press D on my keyboard and draw a text box here. And then I'm going to just basically copy this text from the website. And then I'm going to set a different font family and then a different size. And maybe I'm going to also change the letter spacing here. Then it will be aligned to the center. And then I will also go ahead and change the height to fit content. Then I'm going to duplicate this text. And now as you can see, these are placed right next to each other. It's because they are parents, so the sticky frame is set to horizontal direction. It has a layout. And so if we change this direction to vertical, you'll see that now they're placed right below each other. So I can get the other text here and paste it in within this. This will be interfont and then 16 pixel size, and the line height will be a little bit bigger, maybe 1.5. Also, the color can be changed just to make sure that we have a little bit less contrast with the background. Then just make sure that we have removed this space from the bottom. And I think we also got this explore all categories from the button text that we don't really need, so I'm going to remove those texts from the end. And yeah, we basically now have both of the text layers. I'm going to also go to the assets panel. I'm going to just drag and drop this button that I already designed. And now we have all of these elements. I can wrap them in a group or a frame. So I'm going to select all of them, and I'm going to press a keyboard shortcut, which is Option, Command, and Enter. This, as you can see, wraps them in a stack, and I can rename these to texts. And so now I can select both of the text layers. I can set their width to fill just to make sure that they fill up the available space and we have a nice responsive layout. And then as you can see now, the subtitle is a little bit, too wide. And to control that, we can set a max width on that. So I'm going to select that text layer, go to size, max width, and apply 360 pixels maybe. Yeah, that's perfect. Now I think we just need to make sure that we have a little bit more space between these. So I'll just select their parent, which is this text frame that we've just wrapped them in, and then go to the right panel and change this gap to 24. I think 24 looks great. So now we have the text frame and we can create the images as well. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically place these images right above each other. So now they are like laid out on this canvas like this, but I want to make sure that these are right above each other. So I'm going to just select all of them. And then I'm going to just use these icons here to align horizontally and vertically. And now you can see that basically these are right above each other. I can select all of them and then hit Command and Enter on my keyboard. This wraps them in a frame. It's not a stack. It's just a simple frame. It doesn't have this layout edit. The reason for this is because if the layout is added, then all of these will be placed right below each other because they will be relatively positioned within this stack. And so that's why we just need a simple frame here. If you don't really know what is relative positioning or absolute positioning, make sure to check out my video, which is titled Avoid the #1 rookie mistake, because in that video I explain everything about relative and absolute positioning. So now back to this images frame, I'm going to rename it to images. And then I'm going to make sure that this image 1 is actually at the top here. So this is the first one that we see here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that these images within are pinned to the top, right, and left. And that's exactly what is set right here. So I don't have to do anything. And then I'm going to log this aspect ratio here on the images. And now basically with this setup, I can just resize this group here, and every single image within will be resized as well. As you can see, we always have to take time to make sure that we have the right structure and the right setup, just to make sure that when later on we have to change something here, maybe the size on a smaller device, we can change that really easily and everything will nicely adapt. So I'm going to have 445 pixel for the size, and then I'm going to also select these images within, and I'm going to make sure that they have a slight border radius. But as I applied this border radius, I can see that this images frame has a white background, which we don't really need, so I'm going to remove that. So now what I can do is I can press Command and X on my keyboard. This will cut this. And now it's on my clipboard, so I can just come here to this sticky frame and place this element here within the frame as well. So now we basically have both of the elements that we need within the sticky frame, the text, and then the images as well. So what I'm going to do is just an extra adjustment, just to make sure that, as you can see, the images here are also at the center and the texts are also centered here. So the way I can do that is I can basically keep the text layer relatively positioned, and then the images can be absolutely positioned. This will basically mean that I can just go ahead and just change its position with my arrow keys. I can also press Option H and Option V on my keyboard to align it horizontally and vertically to the center. And now, as you can see, it is basically in the center. So now if I scroll down, as you can see, as I scroll, these are just sticking to the center of my viewport, and then they scroll away. So now our job is basically to animate these objects as we are scrolling down on this sticky section. In order to do that, we're going to jump into the next section where we're going to plan this animation. So to help you better understand what is going to happen here in this section, I opened up Jitter here on my browser to show you how they are dealing with animations. So basically, as you can see, we have this animation here where this logo pops up, and you can see that we have this timeline here at the bottom of the screen. And basically each animation has a little part on the timeline, so we can see where it starts and then where it ends. And we basically have this for each animation. So for example, this is a scale animation. This scales in this little circle. And then this here scales in the logo, and I can reorder this so I can make sure that maybe they happen at the same time, or I can make sure that the logo scales in a little bit later. And I can really easily play around with this animation by just dragging these animations here on this timeline. And so basically what we will do is we will screenshot this just to make sure that I can show you what is going to happen. I'm going to just drag it into Framer. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to just rotate it like this. And you're going to now see that what we're going to do is we're going to basically have this same timeline. However, we're going to rotate it by 90 degrees because we are seeing the website like this, and we're going to be scrolling on the website from top to bottom. And so, for example, if this part right here is an image scaling animation, then that animation will happen as we scroll over this part. And then when we scroll over this part, another type of animation will happen. So we just have to think about what happens first, that will be on the top, and what happens last, which will be on the bottom. So I'll go to this other page, which is called Planner. You can also come here if you remixed the project. And then you're going to see this little timeline frame right here in the middle of this breakpoint. I'm going to paste in this timeline right here just so we can actually see it. And then what we do is we basically plan the different animations that are going to happen along this scroll animation. So if I go back to the project here, you can see that first we start animating the images, and then towards the end of the animation, we also start a new animation, which is the appear effect on the text, and then they both end at the same time. So let's try to recreate this here on this timeline. We have this first column within this timeline, and it has two animation blocks. I can remove the second one. We can just have one here. And on the right panel, we have these properties for that, where I can just rename this animation. So we can rename it like images movement. So this will be the animation for the images movement. And then what I can do is I can just simply rename the layer so it has the same name. And then what we need is another animation that happens somewhere around here. The way we can do that is by duplicating this column. So we have another one right here next to it. I'm going to just change its color right here so we can better differentiate. And basically what we would need is to make sure that this happens somewhere around here. So the way I can do that is I can simply duplicate this images movement and then call it spacer. And then on the right panel, I have this variant. I can change it to hidden, so it will be completely hidden. And then I can change this images movement to a different name, so text appear. Let's also rename the layer. And then what I can do is I can just make sure that this text appear has a different height. So maybe we can use a relative 30% here. So now we have created our timeline. So if this would be a regular app like Jitter, it would look something like this. It would be basically rotated by 90 degrees, and we would go through the timeline from left to right. However, as we are on a website, it is going to happen from top to bottom. So that's why we have this timeline rotated like this. So basically that's how you can plan the animation here in Framer. And if you want to add more animations, you can create more columns here. If you want to make sure that this text appear animation happens a little bit faster, or maybe here in the center as this images movement is still happening, you can definitely do that. But for now, what we're going to have is we're going to have this images movement here, and then the text appear will start a little bit later, but both animations will end at the same time. It's really important that when you are planning your animation here within this timeline, you should make sure that these components within have these sizing options, which is either fill or relative. As you can see right here, it's relative, because that way you can make sure that if this timeline is actually resized, because it will be resized, you see that all of these proportions stay the same. So this stays 30%, this still takes up the full height of the timeline. So just make sure to use those relative sizing options. So now what I can do is I can go on to the next section and execute this animation. So I'm just gonna copy this timeline, go back to my tutorial page, and then here within this animation section, I can paste in the timeline. So now as you can see, it is right next to this sticky frame. And you might already know why is this happening. This animation section is a stack again. It has these layout settings on the right, and the direction here is set to horizontal. So I just have to make sure that it is vertical, and I'm gonna also make sure that the gap is 0. So now, as you can see, it is pretty good. However, there's another small issue, and that's that the sticky is, as you can see, it's not at the top of its parent of this animation section. So we have to also make sure that the distribute here is at start. So all of these items within will start from the top of the stack. So now we have this timeline here. And what I can do is I can just make sure that it is set to width fill, so it is responsive. And basically the height of this will determine the length of the animation. So I can set it to maybe 1000, and then this animation section can finally be fit content, and it will nicely fit the content within, which is the sticky, which has 100 pH, and the timeline, which has 1000 pixels, so the animation will play for 1000 pixels. So the first step in order to execute this animation is that we have to make sure that these right here, the image movement and the text appear, has scroll sections, because that's how we will be able to connect these timeline elements to the actual animations that will happen when they are entering our report. So images movement will have the scroll section named image. As you can see, I'm just adding it here on the right panel, and I'm going to select text appear and add scroll section text. So now we have these scroll sections, and now we can go into the elements that need to be animated and just click, for example, this image, go to effects, and we're using scroll transform. This is basically an effect that allows us to transform elements as we scroll down the page. We can have different triggers here, but as I said, we're going to use section in view. And then we're going to choose the section here, which is the image, because we want to play this animation when this image enters the viewport, this image part of the timeline. And we can specify the effect here. So the from state will be 1 opacity, 1 scale. And then the to state will be a little bit smaller scale. So let's say 0.4. And then we can use the offset like this to offset it to the left and maybe to the top a little bit. But as you can see, we can no longer see it. And that's because this images frame, its parent, has overflow hidden. So we have to change the overflow to visible to make sure that the images that we're going to animate out are actually still visible as they are overflowing their parent. So let's go back to the effect and let's go to this to state and just fine tune these offsets so we get a position that we like. So I'm gonna have minus 360 here and minus 400. So this will be the position, the end position of this image here. So we can add this transition here to make the animation a bit smoother, but I'm gonna use a different method here that I'm gonna just quickly show you. So I'm gonna go to assets and then frame university, and I'm going to just drag and drop this smooth scroll here to the website. Then I'm going to just drag it above the nav, and then basically this will add a smooth scrolling effect to the website. If you don't have this component, you can go to framer.university and you can search the resources page, just search for smooth scroll, and then you can copy the component from here to any of your websites. So now if we take a look at this, what we will notice is that once this image's movement starts entering the viewport, that transformation starts happening, and when that timeline ends there, the animation also ends. So now what I have to do is basically to add a similar scroll effect to all of these images. So for example, image 8, I'm going to just add effect scroll transform, I'm gonna set the trigger to section in view, select the same image trigger, and then the from state again, 1 opacity, 1 scale, and the to state will be again a little bit smaller size and then a different offset. And I have to do this for each of the images. A way to kind of speed up this process is to make sure that you copy the effect. You can set this like this, and then if you select the image 8, which already has this effect, you can press Command and K on your keyboard and then type in copy effect. And then when you go to image 7, you can go Command and K again and paste effect. And so now you will have the section in view trigger, the image section set, the from state set, and what you only have to do is to change the to state. So I'm gonna do this for all of these images now. Okay, so now in theory, each of these images have the effect. As you can see, they also have these nice stars on the layers panel next to the name. It basically means that they have an effect applied. So now if I preview this, you can see that as this images movement timeline part comes into the view, these images nicely start animating out. So it works really well. So now let's animate the text as well. So when this text appear purple frame comes in, our text frame comes in from 0 opacity and a little bit smaller scale to 1 opacity and 1 scale. So I can select the text frame on the layers panel, go to effects, use the same scroll transform effect, section in view, then the section will be text. That is what we use to trigger the animation. The from state will be 0 opacity and 0.9 scale, and then the to state will be 1 opacity, 1 scale. So now if we take a look at this, you'll see that as we start scrolling down, the blue frame comes in, images start moving out, and when the purple frame comes in, the text also appears. So as you can see, you can plan your animation visually and then implement it on your Framer website really easily. So once you are basically satisfied with everything that you have, you can just go within this timeline, select all of these components, and make sure that they are set to variant hidden. So now if we take a look at this, the visitor on your website doesn't even know what is going on in the background. What you can also do is you can select the timeline and go to styles and then set pointer events to none, just to make sure that we can still interact with the website below the timeline element, which is not really the case. As you can see, I cannot click this explore categories here. So let's see why that is happening. Actually, it's because a similar issue. We have this images frame, which is above the text layers, and that can also prevent us from interacting with these layers below it. So we just have to make sure that that also gets this pointer events none style. So now we will be able to select the text here and also click this button. So perfect. Now what we can do is basically what we always do at the end of each website creation. We go to this little phone breakpoint and see if any changes are needed. Let's take a look at this. As you can see, these images are a little bit too big. So what we can do is we can just make sure that they are smaller. So remember how we created this images wrap and made sure that we can just simply change its size and all of the images within will also change. Well, it's great for us now because I can just change it to 300 and then I can select all of the images within and also make sure that the corner radius is a little bit smaller on them. So now if we take a look at this on a mobile device, you'll see that it works perfectly. So yeah, that's it for this video. I hope that you were able to learn something from this. Some of the tactics that I used here, I think could be really helpful for beginners. But let me know in the comments, was it helpful? Do you still have any more questions? Let me know and I'm gonna make sure to answer you guys. And also check out Framer University because it has a bunch of more free resources, remixes and tutorials just like this. So it's a great resource to help you learn Framer. So make sure to like this video, subscribe for more, and I'm gonna see you in the next one.